The drive to the cabin felt endless. The road twisted and turned, cutting through dense woods that seemed to swallow the car whole. The GPS had lost signal miles back, and I was relying on handwritten directions from the cabin's owner. My girlfriend Darla sat in the passenger seat, her arms crossed, staring out the window. She hadn't said much since we left the city, and I couldn't blame her. The last few months had been hell for her. It started with Miles, her co-worker. At first, it was harmless. Compliments, casual flirting, but then it escalated. Late-night texts, unwanted gifts, showing up at her apartment uninvited. I'd begged her to go to the police, but she always refused. "It'll just make it worse," she'd say. "He's harmless." I didn't believe that. That's why I'd booked this cabin. A remote, secluded spot deep in the woods. No cell service, no neighbors, no Miles. Just the two of us. A chance to reset.
Are you sure this is the right way?
Darla asked, her voice tight with anxiety. "It's up here," I said, squinting at the directions. The road narrowed, the trees closing in around us. Finally, we reached a clearing, and there it was. A small, weathered cabin with a sagging porch and a single flickering light above the door. It looked like something out of a horror movie, but I forced a smile. "Home sweet home," I said, trying to lighten the mood. Darla didn't laugh.
The cabin was unsettling. The woods pressed in on all sides, and the air felt heavy, like it was holding its breath. I couldn't shake the feeling that we weren't alone. Jake tried to act normal, unpacking the car and starting a fire in the fireplace, but I could tell he was on edge too. He thinks this trip will make me feel better. W wrong. I can tell he's mad at me about Miles. Miles is just some socially weird guy at work that doesn't seem to take no very well. It started small, but he's become a little obsessive. I don't know. I already went to HR, and that didn't do anything. I know cops won't either. They usually don't do anything until the girl has been attacked first. Guess I gotta wait until it escalates and hope for the best. As the sun set, the unease grew. I kept glancing at the windows, half expecting to see someone staring back at me. That's when the phone rang. The sound was jarring, a shrill ring that echoed through the cabin. Jake and I froze, staring at the old landline phone mounted on the wall. I hadn't even noticed it before. "Who would be calling?" I asked, my voice trembling. Jake walked over and picked up the receiver. There was no response, just heavy breathing on the other end. Jake's face darkened. "Hello?" he repeated, louder this time. Still nothing. He slammed the phone down. "Who was it?" I asked, my heart racing. "Wrong number," Jake said, and though he didn't sound convinced.
The phone rang again an hour later. This time Darla answered. She listened for a moment, her face pale, before hanging up. "It's him," she whispered. "It's Miles." How would he even know the number? I demanded, my frustration boiling over. This cabin is in the middle of nowhere. No one knows we're here. Darla shook her head, tears welling in her eyes.
"I don't know. Maybe he followed us."
"Or maybe you told him," I snapped, the words spilling out before I could stop them. Darla stared at me, stunned.
"What are you saying?"
"I'm saying you've been weird about this whole thing. You won't call the police. You won't report him. What am I supposed to think? Are you hiding something?" Darla shouted, her voice shaking with anger.
"Are you seriously accusing me of cheating right now? After everything I've been through?"
The fight escalated, our voices echoing through the cabin. Finally, Darla stormed out, slamming the door behind her. "I'm going for a swim," she said, her tone final. I didn't stop her. I was too angry, too confused. I sat on the couch, staring at the phone, willing it to ring again, so I could scream at Miles to leave us alone.
The lake was cold, but the water helped clear my head. I couldn't believe Jake had accused me of cheating. After everything I'd been through with Miles, how could he think that? As I swam, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me. I scanned the shoreline, but the woods were dark and still. When I got out, I quickly dried off and dressed, my eyes darting nervously to the trees. I hurried back to the cabin, my heart pounding. As I reached the porch, I heard it, a loud, frantic banging on the door. "Jake," I called, my voice trembling. The door flew open before I could reach it. Miles stood there, his face twisted with desperation. "Darla," he said, his voice low and urgent. "I had to see you," I screamed, backing away. Jake appeared behind Miles, his face bloody and bruised. He lunged at Miles, but the man was stronger than he looked. He knocked Jake to the ground with a single blow, then turned back to me. "You don't understand," Miles said, stepping toward me. "We're meant to be together." I didn't hesitate. I turned and ran, my bare feet slapping against the dirt as I sprinted to the car. I fumbled with the keys, my hands shaking, and finally got the engine started. As I peeled out of the driveway, I glanced in the rearview mirror. Miles was standing in the middle of the road, watching me drive away. I didn't stop until I reached the city. I'd call the police, I told myself. I'd get help for Jake. But for now, all I could do was drive.
I groaned, struggling to sit up. My head throbbed and my vision blurred. Miles stood over me, a twisted smile on his face. "Don't worry," Miles said. "She'll be back. She always comes back." The darkness swallowed me whole, Miles' laughter echoing in my ears. I didn't know if Darla would come back. I didn't know if I'd ever see her again. All I knew was that I was alone with Miles in the middle of nowhere, and he wasn't done with us yet.